This is a tutorial for picking up the provisional cast-on stitches at the bottom of the hat A Warm Beginning, then correcting how those stitches are seated on the needle, because this invisible provisional cast-on does alternate whether the left or the right leg is on the front of the needle, and then how to knit two together from both the front and back needle to fold that brim up and close it. So I've created a mock-up here. It has got 10 garter stitch rows, and then in the actual hat it then has 6 rounds of stockinette. These are not worked in the round for this tiny little swatch, but for your actual hat it will be in the round. I'm going to take a double pointed needle and I'm going to follow the course of this waste yarn all the way through, and that means that some of these stitches will be coming on seated correctly and some will be coming on seated incorrectly. So I'll make a second pass through with my second double pointed needle, and I'll switch how those alternating stitches are seated on the needle as I go. When I get to the last stitch, it can be a little hard to grab, so I'm actually going to go on ahead and pull out the waste yarn from all the other stitches that are already safely on this DPN. And then I can just tug and pull that loop up so it's easier to work into. All right, now I've got stitches on my DPN, but they're not all aligned the same way, and I want them all to be aligned the same way. So I'm going to take my second DPN here, and I want the right leg to be on the front of the needle. So I'm coming in from behind to push that right leg onto the front. Now this stitch is seated correctly with the right leg on the front, so I'm going to just slip it as if I was purling the stitch. It does not change the alignment of the stitch on the needle. The next one is seated incorrectly, so I'm going to come in again from the back. This one is correct. This one is incorrect. This one is correct. This one is incorrect. And you would do that across as many stitches as you have slipped off of the waste yarn, which I have recommended 10 to 20 stitches at a time, so it's easy to manage. Well, now I have got my circular needle is still loaded with my live stitches for continuing on with the hat body. I now have live stitches also from the cast on this DPN. So I'm going to fold it up behind to create that folded brim. Now, because we're working in the round, your working yarn is going to be coming off of the right hand needle. So you're going to take that working yarn and you're going to start knitting two together by passing your needle as if to knit through the stitch on the first needle. That's your outer brim stitch. And then also doing the same on the second needle. That's your inner brim, your cast on stitch for the inner brim there. And now you grab your loop from your working yarn, you pull it through 1, 2 stitches. You have now passed that loop through both the first stitch on the front needle and the first stitch on the back needle. Now you pass both stitches off. You have 1 resulting stitch on your right needle, and you're going to just continue in that way. Pass it through the first stitch on your front needle and then the first stitch on your back needle. Pull your loop through both stitches and pull them off. It's like working a 3-needle bind off, but with no bind off. You are just continuing with the same stitch count that you had before you pulled your provisional cast on out and brought those live stitches up to connect them to this round. When you get to a stitch marker, you'll just slip it and then just keep on going. It won't create any problems. Once you have worked your way all the way around, that brim will be neatly folded up and doubled. You have a different row count for your garter stitch and for your stockinette, so that your garter stitch stretches out a little bit, but they lay fairly the same height inside and outside. And so now you've got that brim folded up and joined, and you're ready to continue on. And when you're working it in the round, here's the one that I'm working on right now. When you're working it in the round, it's going to look like that, just all the way around. When you reach the point where you first cast on, there's a gap because you were working this inner brim flat, and at the end of the project you'll come back, use the tail from your cast on to seam that up. And from here on you're just working more stockinette stitch in the round.